having Adam and Justin on because I really want them to tell the story about how BTB Burrito got started. Or should I say, guys, how it almost didn't get started.
Yeah, we'd love to tell that story. So thanks for having us on.
No problem.
Good to be here.
So it was 2003. I was a student at Michigan, a senior. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do when I graduated. I was an English major. And my family's from California, and I loved eating Mexican food. And every time I would go home on break, I would eat Mexican food. And I felt like Ann Arbor could really use more of that type of food. And there was really a dearth of that in Ann Arbor. And through conversations, talked to Justin, who I knew from California as well. And he had an idea to open up a burrito place, but his idea was to open it up in Australia. He said, there's no burritos in Australia. We're going to bring burritos out there and totally dominate. And I said, there's no burritos in Ann Arbor, and it's a lot closer. Why don't we try it here? So that was kind of how we came up to the idea of opening a burrito place in Ann Arbor. We met up in California. We drove out here, and we started to look for locations. And pretty quickly, we found a location that we fell in love with. It was on State and Liberty. No, it wasn't. It was on Williams and State Street. And it was close to the Diag. We thought it would be great for lunch. It was close to the bars. We thought it'd be good for late night. And immediately we started jumping in, negotiating the lease with the landlord. And during this whole process, we were developing our recipes. We were, vetting names. We were coming up with marketing ideas. And we were negotiating this lease. And we basically had this whole concept laid out and ready to go. The problem was that the lease that we got from the landlord was completely packed with clauses and language that was totally over our head, and we didn't understand, but we didn't really know anything. So we thought, hey, this is probably totally normal and totally what commercial leases are like. So let's just go with it. We did have the idea to pass the lease off to my stepdad, who's a lawyer. And he took a look at it and he said, do you want me to go through this lease as I would any other lease? And we said, yeah, go for it. And he redlined the whole thing. And he said, none of this is acceptable and we need to go back to the landlord and negotiate on all of this. And it kind of reiterated what we had originally been thinking about this 25-page double space, super, stringent lease. And so we said, okay, great. We'll go back to the landlord.
Your gut was telling you like there was a lot wrong with it.
Yeah, our gut was telling us that there was a lot wrong with it, but our gut was also telling us that if we did a really good job and we paid our rent and our customers were coming in, that none of this would ever matter.
Yeah. I mean, we really had the idea that if we wrote a rent check every month, that's all that mattered. That's what we kept telling ourselves.
It's ignore the fine print.
Ignore everything. Ignore everything but the one clause at the beginning that you owe this rent every month.
Right.
And that was to us, is very early young entrepreneurs, the only thing that we really cared about. We thought the rest would take care of itself.
Right.
So we go to the landlord and we say, here's our, revised copy. We want to change all this stuff. And they take one look at it and say, no, all this is staying. Take it or leave it. And we looked at each other and we said, all right, we'll take it. Let's go. We want this location. We want to open our burrito place. Like, we're ready to go.
So you were committed, and so much so that Justin, you organized your dad to come out.
Yeah, so we'd come out at the beginning of the summer around June to search for a location, and we went all around town. This was a pretty lengthy process. Found this, started this lease negotiation, and then I flew back to California for the time being while we worked out the details. It was going to be however long until we started doing a build out. We hoped. And so once we decided, whatever, we're going to sign this lease, we're ready to move forward. My dad actually agreed to load up his truck with all his tools and like a 20-foot trailer and drive from California to Michigan all the way across the country. So, and help us with build out, because we were doing this on a shoestring budget. I mean, we should mention
we had no money.
We had cobbled together a decent amount of money to just, have enough money to get do a build out, get the doors open. That's it.
No money, but all the momentum and commitment.
I mean, we were
ready to
as
go.
excited as you possibly could be. It's all we talked about, all we thought about. So anyway, I'd flown back to California, jumped in my dad's truck with him, and we literally drove 2 days straight, sort of sleeping in the back of the cab while the other person drove, hauled tools all the way across the country, out to Ann Arbor and pulled in. And so that, this was all sort of building up to just go time. We were going to jump in, start doing demo, start building out this little location.
So the last part of what we needed to do to satisfy the lease was to write the deposit check, which, according to the landlord, because we had no money and we had no experience, had to be 6 months prepaid rent and a 2-month security deposit. So 8 months worth of rent up front in a check. And as we said, we had no money.
For those of you that don't know, pretty crazy.
Pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Pretty crazy. And especially given our budget, it was everything that we had. We literally...
It was probably, about 25-30% of our total budget to launch this project.
Right.
Yeah.
So we needed to write a cashier's check. So we went to the bank, and this is the 11th hour and 59 minutes. I mean, we're walking into the bank ready to get this cashier check and bring it to the landlord who was right around the corner, and start this process. And we're in line at the bank at PNC. That's just a block from here, right? And we're talking about, okay, we got to write $25,000, and we're talking about the landlord's name and what we're going to do, and we got to mail it in. And out of nowhere, someone standing behind us in line overhears what we're talking about and says, "Hey, wait, what are you guys talking about?" And we look around like, who is this guy? And this huge Italian dude with a thick Italian accent says, "You talking about giving $25,000 to that landlord?" He's like, "You just write that check, send it in, and go home. Don't even open your doors. Just go home, because you're never going to see it again." I'm like, what is this guy talking about? Like, what? And we found out that that his name was Giuseppe. He owned a pizza place right around the corner, and he was a tenant of the same landlord, and he was in a lawsuit with him. And he wasn't the only one. There was a list of tenants who had been sued by the landlord and kicked out of their locations for the exact reason that they take the deposit and then they actually enforce every clause on that lease that we were concerned about, and then they kick you out and get another sucker in. And what Giuseppe said was, he said, go to the library, check out this article from the Ann Arbor Observer from 1984 or 89, something like that, and it will tell you everything that you need to know. And so we didn't write the check. We did go to the library. We saw this article. We read through it and realized that everything that we had been concerned about, every little nagging voice in our head that had been telling us don't go forward with this, was actually a real concern, and we should listen to it. And we made the decision that day that we were not going to go forward with this location. We weren't going to sign this lease. We weren't going to write this check.
So you had a professional lawyer, not only that, but a family member, someone you trust, that basically redlined the entire contract and said, don't do it. And you had a slight feeling not to do it. But what it took was a complete stranger in line at the bank to say, you're crazy. And this stranger was also quite a character. Really easy to just shove off and say whatever, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about.
Sure, yeah. I mean, if you compare Giuseppe to my stepdad Matthew, who's the lawyer, I mean, Giuseppe has a big presence. You're going to listen to what he says. He's a unique character, big guy, loud, and he just says whatever's on his mind. And the fact that a normal person standing behind us in line, listening to what we were talking about, even if they had all the reservations in the world about our plan, would never have interrupted us and told us what to do.
Yeah.
But not Giuseppe. Giuseppe heard us, and he had to step forward and tell us, don't do that. And it totally altered the whole path of our business.
Right.
Instead of signing in that location and moving forward with that lease, we walked home from the library, and we were trying to figure out, okay, what are next steps? Actually, the first thing that we had to do was tell Justin's dad that it was time to drive home with all of his tools in his trailer.
We had actually driven out. We were living in a college apartment or a college house on 512 Hill Street. He was sleeping in his truck. I was sleeping on a mattress on the floor. We were waiting, all pent up, ready to go. So yeah, we made this decision, and we're walking back to the house basically to say, sorry, we're not taking the lease. So I guess you're driving back to California. So yeah, it was a big moment, and it was a big decision. And yeah, it's pretty incredible how it all came together at that one moment.
And so on the way home, we walked by Mr. Spots on State Street, and we see that there's a sign in the window that says, "We're moving next door."
And it's literally just a handwritten little note in the corner of the door, like we're moving. And we
Easy
randomly,
to miss.
I mean, we're walking by, we randomly look sideways, and there this is, just sitting on the door. And it's like,
And we said,
bell
all right,
goes
well,
off.
if they're moving next door, then their location's going to be open. We talked to Tim and Keith, the owners of Mr. Spots, and they gave us the name of the landlord. We called him up. Dennis Loy is his name. And we told Dennis all about our burrito idea. And he said, sorry, guys, we have a smoothie concept that's coming in. So unfortunately, can't have the spot. And, you know, it was just a shot in the dark. So whatever. And we went home and we talked to our friends and Justin's dad. And we said, you know, we're going to have to start at square one.
And we, you know, it had been, you know, this has been a 3-month process to get to that point.
Yeah.
So it's like, man,
You
we're-
just
we're
scrapped a 3-month
you know,
process.
I mean, we're starting all over from scratch. I mean, it's not easy to find locations.
Right.
Locations are very important. And we're, you know, basically sitting there thinking, you know, we got to do this whole thing again.
right.
So the next day we wake up and I get a call from Dennis Loy. And he says, you know, I was thinking about this and I like burritos better than smoothies. I want to give you guys a shot. And he actually canned the smoothie guys and we started negotiating a lease with Dennis and had it done quickly. And we had our new location. And that's where we've been for 15 years.
That's amazing. It's an amazing story and you know, it's such a serendipitous story when it's all said and done.
So there's also one more thing, which is that so now we had to start negotiating with Dennis and get that lease going and then start the build out process of our business. And that whole time we actually were working at Giuseppe's Pizza Place. We became friends with Giuseppe and we started working there just to, you know, make some money and get some experience as we were opening up our place. We were delivering pizzas and cashiering. And it was he became a pretty important guy in our lives at that time.
That's amazing. So I have to ask you, you know, looking back on it all, you know, how important or how much of a factor is destiny, fate, kismet, luck, whatever you want to call it? Or to ask it another way, would BTB still be around if you had signed that first lease if it wasn't for Giuseppe?
No. No. Fate in this circumstance was everything. I mean, the fact that in the bank before we go ahead with this decision, someone taps us on the shoulder and says, don't do it. How often does that happen? It never happens. And in this case, it led the way to all of our future success. The way that BTB burst onto the scene when we opened up with lines out the door, the popularity, the buzz, the energy, we would never have had that in this other location. We didn't know what we were missing. And we just walked in, opened up, and blew away our expectations for what this business was going to be. And it's fueled everything ever since. And that never would have happened if we hadn't been in the bank at that exact moment with that person who had stopped us at that time.
Right. That's amazing.
Yeah, BTB truly was the foundation of everything we did from that point forward.
That's right.
And it's incredible, those not just one moment, but 2 moments that happened within an hour period from each other. One in the bank and one just walking by Mr. Spots and seeing this little sign in the window. And it just, you know, everything falling apart and coming back together all in the course of an hour.
That's amazing. So, you know, you started BTB and then progressed from there. It didn't start and end with BTB. And, you know, BTB in Ann Arbor is how we met and became friends and business partners and other areas as well. So looking back on it, you know, how important has Ann Arbor been to your story? You know, what do you think that this could have happened outside of Ann Arbor, or was it part of the secret sauce?
I guess another question is how well would it have gone in Australia?
Right.
I'd still like to know.
It's not too late.
Yeah, it's not too late.
Probably not.
I don't know if there's a chain that's taken over in Australia, Chipotle Australia.
I'm sure there is.
We might have to go check that out.
That's true. That'd be a good trip.
No, I mean, the realistic other option was California probably, and that never was going to happen. We would never have been successful opening up a burrito place in California because they're all over the place. Ann Arbor, we felt like we were bringing something new here.
Well, our whole idea was that looking at a college town in California, you had 5, 10 different burrito places. And in Ann Arbor, we basically felt like there was one. There was Pancheros was the other, counterpart to BTB back in the day. And there hadn't been this explosion of other counter service burrito places. So, I mean, the specific reason we were here was comparing a California college town to Ann Arbor at the time and feeling like there was this huge hole in the market.
Yeah, and then we wanted to bring that concept to the rest of the Big Ten, hence the name Big Ten Burrito.
Yeah, that's right.
Which it's now BTB Burrito, as you well know, because the Big Ten Conference didn't really like that name.
They had some issues.
Yeah.
That's for another podcast.
That is for that might be 3 more podcasts. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then there was the fact that I was a student at Michigan, which was hugely helpful in getting the word out. I think that people were excited about a U of M student, forming his own business and growing it. And then there's the Ann Arbor community in general, which is just super supportive of local businesses and always has been, and would rather shop at a local store over a chain, any day of the week. And that's been super helpful for us in our whole trajectory for all our businesses.
Yeah. And the reality is our goal was to expand within the Midwest. And instead we expanded just within Ann Arbor because we have found it to be just a very supportive community. The university and the Ann Arbor proper sort of come together to create this very cool environment for entrepreneurs, for small businesses. And it's just a great place to do business. We love Ann Arbor. We feel lucky to be small business owners and entrepreneurs here.
Well, thank you again. It's an honor for me to have you both on as my first guest, so I appreciate it. And to everyone else listening out there, go Blue.
Go Blue.